Now, I know a chap who's paying a pastor chap, paying his stipend, his income. So the church doesn't have to pay it, he's funding it. Now, is he funding it because he's found Jeff to be such a fine character that he wants Jeff to have the freedom to do whatever he thinks is best? Or is he funding it because he wants a particular church activity to be achieved, and Jeff is the right man to achieve that? In other words, quite simply speaking, I suppose, if Jeff decided, no, he's actually more value as an international minister, and he stops running the church, would this chap still fund Jeff's income? Do you see there is a difference? In other words, is he funding Jeff because there's a personal identity with the individual, in that he's found him such a fine man, he wants to give him a greater freedom to do great things that perhaps the chap who's financing can't do himself, but he does have the money to help Jeff to do so? Or is it tied to a specific non-personal thing, but he realises that Jeff is the ideal man for the job, so in effect he's willing to pay Jeff to do it? And if Jeff then said, well, I don't mind you paying me, but I'm going to spend my time not running a church, but doing the international ministry, would my friend then would simply say, oh, well, I really want someone who can do the church, and you would be ideal if you're willing to do it, but if you're not willing to do it, well, I'll try and think of some other solution for the goal that I'm interested in. In other words, do I, as the funding agency, have some goals that are independent of people, and I'm looking for the right employees for the job? Or am I funding certain people to do what is best? Now, when you give, when you tithe, say, or when you give charitably, where you just give, you're not buying a service. You simply provide income for a person so that they can do what they wish with their income. Now, you may be doing this because their ability to earn income is so low that you feel you want to come to their rescue. And you know that they will spend whatever you give them on whatever they want to spend it on. You might, of course, casually look at it and say, well, you're just spending on drugs instead of your family and so on. And you might change your mind as to how much you're willing to fund them. So when you, in some sort of stylized sense, give to the Lord's work, you give to the church, I think what you're saying is, well, I accept that whatever the church does with the money is what I think is well spent, and so I'm happy to contribute. And you might do the same with your time and effort and labour, so that you're happy to, I don't know, help clean the place, because in cleaning the place you're helping towards some activities indirectly that you appreciate, like the services being held there and the place being kept nice for everybody to find a benefit from. If on the other hand you find it's actually ends up being a doss house for people that you don't wish to mix with and aren't pursuant to goals and values spiritually that you appreciate, you might put your labours and support elsewhere. So in some sense, while it's a place you have some faith in that's going to be doing what you value, you're happy to contribute. You're not buying its services, you're just happy to contribute. And if you think that it's not achieving such, then you seek to put your patronage elsewhere, if you like. A rather separate issue, but in some sense related, is the notion that an organisation is not a person. I can be contributing to a person, I support them in their entirety because there's something wholesomely acceptable to me about their values and what they strive to achieve in general. Or I can be contributing to an organisation because I think it achieves something that in general I appreciate and value and think's right. But the organisation is not a person, and I'm probably more focused on specifically the goals that the organisation has and set to achieve, and to the extent that it achieves them. Whereas with a person, it's rather more generalised in that I'm anticipating that the person can choose the goals because the goals are going to be harmonious with all that I value. So I might invest in their education, your children, because you anticipate that what they do with such an investment is still of value to you. It will help in their welfare, and their welfare is important to you in the future as you look forward. So you're happy to give them a good education, even though it's going to cost you a bit of money, or buy them a house and set them up with a home, or help them in some regard towards their home. You're there to see, in a more general sense, to help the person. You might, in a general sense, be there to help the organisation, but somehow it's not the same loyalty as if it's person to person. If the organisation does seem to have some sort of personhood about it, it's because in some sense it's become an institution that reliably achieves what you value in the longer run. So you might contribute to a charity or a church generally because of that. Even so, it's important to realise that it's not actually a person. We're not talking about an organisation or a church as being something eternal, whereas we are thinking of personhood as being eternal, or something of personhood that a person can develop into that will be eternal, and therefore we're investing in the eternal. And the word investing is perhaps not appropriate now. We're doing all we can to encourage and help and nurture something eternal that we value. So we commit ourselves to people, and we find that such commitment is surprisingly enduring. It endures all sorts of discord and difficulties, ideally. And if it doesn't, well, that's great sorrow, because we have, in fact, at some point, and probably for some considerable time, cherished a hope that it was the eternal, the permanent. Now, there are some schools of thought that say nothing's permanent, and in a sense, we're recognizing that it's still of value in that it's moving towards something that we anticipate to be very good. Like, in the religious setup, you might be contributing to someone's welfare, where you think that welfare could become an eternal harmony in heaven, say, part of glorious goodness that never fails. So you're nurturing that, you're contributing towards it. We don't expect an organisation to be eternal and perfect and wonderful. Or perhaps you do. Perhaps you see the church as something that is going to develop into something that's considerably better than it is at the minute. Or is spiritually, fundamentally, even though it's not manifesting as such in the world too well. There's all sorts of discourse and splits and aggros going on. But in some sense you feel it is going to be an eternal establishment and a haven for something else that you value eternally, your own and the lives of those you love, and who will have the same wonderful values. May not have the same values yet, but you're hopeful. Yes, thank you, Heavenly Father. Now, of course, there are many features and facets to an organisation, and how much more to a person and their individuality, their blend of character and traits and different facets of their personality. And we may be valuing some and rejecting others, not valuing others' value, finding other things a cost to us. And we may find it very difficult to keep some separation between those two and focus and benefit just from the good and avoid the harm, the cost, the bad. And our judgment in that regard, of course, will be whatever it is, and may be variable through time, not necessarily within our control, but more a consequence of things that happen, circumstances and so on. Things flare up and certain bad sides, personalities grate too much with us, and we make a division, we part, we separate. And we influence the relationship in the future, of course. It influences it whether we separate or not. So all of this question of harmony and inharmony is what living in the universe of space, time and matter is about. And our experience and the values we form in consequence, I'm assuming, is the very reason for us being here in this existence, why God has us on earth, if you like, in this universe. Training as we are, we're experiencing the consequences of different approaches and shifting our values accordingly on reflection from our experiences. And in some sense, I think, being prepared, therefore, for having full freedom in heaven, in the full safety of being no inharmony or no unacceptable inharmony to the other members of the heavenly host and God, of course. Thank you, Heavenly Father. There's a difference then between love and commitment to someone and purchasing of a particular service and funding a particular service that you value. They're both selective, but the first is to love and the second is to buy. The second is I value a specific service and will fund it if it comes up to my expectations. But the former, the personal, is a devotion or a gift to the individual in the hope they become the loveliness that God has in mind for them, and to help and to contribute to that. So you might be in an organisation, you buy a particular service, you look for an accountant, or you look for an administrator, or you look for a worship leader that's going to have the following abilities to achieve a certain outcome for the organisation, and in some general sense its members. In other words, you buy in the marketplace and you employ, and you pay for that which you choose to pay for. And if you receive what you anticipate, well, you're happy with that. And if you don't, you may look elsewhere. But love and kindness is not this. Not as regards your relationship to the individual that you're hiring or paying. He is a hireling and will in turn treat you accordingly. He will attempt to give you what you ask for if he considers it in his interest to do so. There's no commitment to the individual, you see. It's to the service that I'm looking for. The particular service as in buying goods and services. But if I delegate, then I say something like, I give this responsibility, this area, to you, to do it your way. I have faith and trust in you in some sense. I'm not choosing the particular service that I'm funding. I'm simply delegating this responsibility to you, that you use it as you think is best. And I'm doing that because, ideally, I love you. Not just the organisation, not just want to meet a particular service or commodity that I value for myself or for the church, but specifically I value you, and that I value what this responsibility will do for you, how it will bless you, how it will help your life spiritually. I could find a better accountant, say, but it's the person of you that is the focus that I'm interested in. It's to help you, not to have an accountant. I might need an accountant. You might or might not have the ability to be an accountant, or a worship leader, or someone to lead the Bible study. But I think it will bless you most if I delegate this office to you. Now, of course, I'm very happy to discuss things with you and suggest things, but I very much want to leave the command of this area that I'm delegating to you, because I think it will bless your life to experience such office. It may be relatively costly for the organisation. We could find a better accountant or leader of the Bible study in some competent sense. But my focus is not on the organisation, but on specifically your welfare and blessing you. Now what I'm saying is that is a better goal, better way of acting than to be buying services for the organisation. Organisations come and go. People are eternal. Personhood is eternal. And our priority is persons, not organisations. Organisations are not people. They can die tomorrow. Nothing eternally lost in that. They are simply patterns of things. Persons are not patterns. Persons are not something that can simply be remade somewhere else. They're in a dimension which is not time, space and matter. They are more complex dimensions, or indeed something quite different to such, in the eternity of what matters to God, who God is. So, the notion thou shalt not kill is in some sense giving some indication of the importance of life, and that life is not simply a pattern, a coming together of certain elements of the material world, but something behind it, beyond, of a different realm. We are here, in a sense, in that we're experiencing these patterns of forces and matter in this dimension that come together and dissolve and reform. But they are not us. Not the person, not the eternal, not the children of God. When we think of spiritual goals, we are concerned then with the relevance of all of this experience here with regard to the eternal, that which is beyond it, the spiritual realm. We're not interested in the history of the record and, in a sense, what is seen in this world. We are focused on the spiritual, the eternal, the things of God. God can reform the universe with a different history any time he likes, and backdate anything in time, change anything in the past and the future and the present. It's simply a show of the phenomenal universe. But he is using it to achieve something fantastic in the spiritual. Namely, as I understand it, the birth of beings like himself, of himself, that nonetheless grow to an independent adulthood that will form and do form and continually add to the wonderful heavenly family, the host of heaven, of which he is the Father. Well, that's the nearest we can describe it in the terms of this universe. The nearest we can describe it that seems to give the best guidance to you as to what we're at, according to the Jesus story. The world finds it very hard to delegate. It dominates, it steers, it wants certain worldly results. But the godly seek to give, seek to bless the individual, not what I necessarily receive, or other people receive even. You see, you might be motivated to help me because you think this will in particular contribute to the heavenly host. But I think I'm saying that God is not so purposed. He is purposed when he uses you to bless you. He can bless the heavenly host in a million other ways. But doing it this way, using you, is going to bless you. And he loves you in your own right, and chooses to do with you only what blesses you. So you may say to me, what happens where there's a conflict then? Where him being focused on me is at the cost of being focused on others. You know, if I give tolerance to this guy causing a disturbance in the church, this is at cost to the whole church. Or whatever the benefit might be to this chap. What do I do for the best? Well, here, perhaps we should see it not from our point of view, but from God's, and his knowing that he's master of all things. He decides the nature of the film, the production. In other words, what I'm saying is that the very fact that this person is here, making such demands, or impacting the situation, is of God. I'm saying that everything that is actually of God. That might be simply to present us with the dilemma so that we learn something spiritual and gain spiritually some or each person in the room. And if it's a cost to others because they're not receiving what they need spiritually, that too will be a blessing, in that they will start to seek ways of exercising their values and finding out the consequence of them. Do you see the world thought that it should lead? It should be making decisions. It should be having it what it understands to be its best way. And so it should if you are still of such a need to find out the consequence of being responsible for running a show and imposing on it the values that you have. Because by it, you find out what your values both are and yet what they should be. You start to imagine something better than who you are. You start to orientate yourself towards God, the eternal. So it's right that you dominate where you have opportunity to dominate and where you wish to. But where you don't wish to because you're simply seeking what God's doing, learning by it, but not steering the show. In other words, where you actually realize that you're not the producer of the film that you're watching, but the audience. You're imagining being the various characters in the film. You're imagining simply watching the story. You're understanding that watching this film is going to be good in itself. And you're also understanding that you're not making the film, but that simply being confronted with the film is changing you spiritually for a blessing. And if your trust is not that, well, you should get up and walk out the cinema, turn the television off, flick the video to something else. No, you can't do that. It's the fact that you can't do that, and it runs, which makes you think, goodness, this is a reality. And that can be frightening if you're an observer forced to watch the film, like it or not. It's frightening if you don't trust the situation that you find yourself in. But if you do trust what you find yourself in, then of course you're not perturbed by the film because you trust that it's for a blessing and for good. See, Jesus didn't do anything in the story. Goes around talking, goes around saying, receive your sight, be healed, and so forth. The story holds for 2,000 years or more as being pivotably central in an extraordinary number of lives as regards spiritual direction. Jesus built nothing, wrote nothing, even the historical record is to be held in contempt in that it doesn't seem to be linked to any other historical record. There's no evidence of Jesus in Roman history, not that it is remotely reliable. Far more likely to have been rehashed since, rewritten into the documents and so on. And there's extremely few of such anyway. What's it come down to? Josephus and someone else, very dodgy. Yeah, this story of a person who left no tangible anything on the planet, who's had more impact on the planet than anything else contemplated as regards our understanding of the spiritual. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I'm not doing anything, I'm just saying if you've seen me, something of my life, who I am is actually the presentation of God in the spiritual to your spirit. I'm not doing, I'm being. I'm not ruling, I'm not a king in your earthly sense at all. My kingdom is quite different. It's in a spiritual realm. It's not of this world. I'm not a judge, not a builder, not a mum, not a dad. I am what I am. You see, we've taken personhood to be the degree to which you affect or alter the physical world. Is the world full of peace and love and kindness and order and any more than it was, say, 2,500 years ago? No, it's not. You know, 20th century is the most appalling century when it comes to harm and malevolence and chaos. In what sense then has God's kingdom come on earth? Hasn't. Only to those that have experienced it. What is that experience? It's a change of consciousness. From what was imagining no God to imagining God. To imagining that all this pattern that we see in the phenomenal world has no meaning at all. And it's extremely frightening. To trusting that it all has meaning. That God rules, has all power and all good intent, all knowledge and all understanding. And his presence is everywhere, omnipresent. And that change seems to have ultimate determination upon who we are, our spirit being. And is felt to be something of the eternal and wonderful. What we call blessing, life eternal in the kingdom of heaven. What we picture as being part of a heavenly family, the heavenly host, with God as our Heavenly Father, in heavenly realms, something eternal, something quite different to what we're seeing and experiencing here in the physical realm. We treat people in that respect when we delegate, when we leave them responsibility to act in the way that they as a person choose to do. We take it that that's what God does with us. When you do something that you in the future might see in hindsight as wrong, God doesn't immediately scream at you to do something else, tell you you're wrong. He leaves you to practice it and see the outcome. Not saying this is true. I'm saying this is what our belief can be. It can be that we have a trust in life as we see it here, to bring life as we truly want to value it, which is eternal in the spiritual realm. In other words, everything is to blessing. We trust what's going on in the phenomenal world. We trust it not because of what we can see in the phenomenal world, but because of what we believe from what we see about the eternal world. What we infer from our experience here changes our personhood from being the transitory here to being the eternal in the heavenly realm, as we come to trust it to be. In other words, the world seeks to rule more, whereas we seek to be more understanding of what God is doing. The world is full of actors, but we have come as a spiritual being to learn from the lesson. Thank you, Heavenly Father. No. I think it's because we want to it's not that we necessarily appreciate entirely their values, but what their values might be to bless them, so that I might love my children not because they've got the right values yet, but because I want them to have the right values, to be blessed. And I might not actually know quite what those values are myself, but I want them to be blessed. Do you see, the commitment is to the person. Organization is not a person. It's not eternal. It's simply a pattern of what people are doing and belonging to and relate to in this phenomenal transitory world, whereas a person is held to be eternal, and I may value that personhood and want to contribute and help. I want them to have a richness here which will help them to be a more wonderful, blessed person. That's what I mean by love. I'm not buying in the marketplace. I'm loving. I'm not paying you a salary in return for certain goods and services to the organization or to other people. I'm giving into your personhood to enrich it. That is my purpose. In short, I'm loving. So now, perversely, I'm going to say that if I'm really running an organization, I'm simply directing who is going to be blessed and how, and I'm delegating responsibility accordingly. Responsibility for the resources of the organization, what the organization can do. I'm delegating that outcome to you. I'm giving you the opportunity to experience life, to do it your way, and to be blessed by the experience, which may be at some cost to the organization. It doesn't matter, the organization's here to serve persons, not persons the organization. And that's what's wrong with the whole concept of obedience instead of to do a thing out of love. I'm not looking for obedience. I'm looking for you to have the life that's going to bring about an eternal conception or an eternal blessing for you. In other words, God comes to us in love. The parent has a child in love because they long to be a part of a blessing to another like themselves, but fully complete in themselves, just as they are. They want to be the cause of being like themselves, and to be able to relate and love and have the existence of such beings. That is who God is. That is who we are as his children. We are children of God, loved before we even exist. And in his nature, therefore loved eternally. We are given life, not paid it. We are loved, not enslaved. And we love back. We are not obedient. We're the most disobedient, like children are. And they are still loved. They are still given, delegated that opportunity to learn to become eternal, blessed, wonderful, just like Mum and Dad. Have I said it right? I don't know. Can you pick up something of what I'm alluding to? Is that the word? Thank you, Heavenly Father. Love you. We just love you because you first loved us. We love you for your loving kindness. Wonderful one. What a joy it is to be your children. Thank you, Father.